Imagine waking up to find XRP practically vanishing from exchanges. It sounds crazy, right? Well, after what I just discovered, that weird scenario might be not so far-fetched. In fact, a single upcoming decision could trigger a chain reaction that leaves everyone scrambling for XRP. And I've got the story on how it all might go down. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I first heard whispers about XRP potentially disappearing off of exchanges, I thought it was just another crypto fairy tale. You know, like those $500 XRP moonshot rumors. But then I came across a crypto CEO explanation that actually stopped me in my tracks. Now, it was about the XRP ETFs, and yes, it is those finance products that Wall Street loves, and how one little tweak in their design could actually suck up a whole ton of XRP from the open market. So I went down a rabbit hole to verify if this was legit, and by the end of it, my skepticism turned into, well, cautious excitement. So stick with me here, because I'm going to share everything that I found, and even a personal little experiment that I'm running to stack even more crypto, so you can see why some people think that XRP's real game hasn't even begun. So, what did I find out? Well, it turns out that not all ETFs are created equal. Now, the XRP ETFs that have launched this year, those are futures ETFs. And get this, they actually don't hold any XRP. And I know what you're thinking, is that for real? And well, an XRP fund that holds 0 XRP, it's a little confusing, but it's exactly that. Right? They're essentially just trading paper promises. Now, according to Jack Claver, this is the CEO who kind of got my attention here, that these futures ETFs never actually buy the actual tokens. The fund managers, they just purchase cash-settled futures contracts and roll them over before they expire, meaning that they never actually touch a single XRP coin. Now, in Jake's own kind of blunt words, future ETFs don't buy a single token of XRP, 0 impact on supply because they never touch the underlying asset. Now, that's paper trading dressed up in an ETF wrapper. Now, in other words, all of the institutional money that can pour into an XRP futures fund does not reflect the price. Not one XRP is taken off of the market. So it's no wonder that those products haven't pumped the price. Now, how could they, right? If they never actually buy up a single XRP. Now, here's the wild part. Even though they don't hold XRP, investors are flocking to these futures ETFs. Now, one of them, the Tectorium's 2x long XRP ETF, ticker XXRP, it launched in April of 2025, and it pulled in around $121 million of assets within the first few weeks. Now, that's a whole lot of money effectively betting on XRP's price without touching XRP itself. Another one, which is the Rex Osprey Fund, the ticker XRPR, it went live in September, and it did shatter records with a $37.7 million in the first day of trading volume. Institutions, they clearly want a piece of the XRP action. But here is the thing, none of that activity is actually reducing the XRP circulating supply out in the world. So it's all just IOUs and cash bets. Now, this got me thinking, what happens when we get an ETF that does buy XRP for real? Right? You've got to enter the spot ETFs, the true game changer, right? Because a spot XRP ETF, unlike a futures ETF, must buy and must hold actual XRP to back the shares that it issues. So think of it like this. Every time that someone invests, let's say $100 into a spot XRP ETF, the fund authorized participants go out and buy $100 worth of real XRP. Then they store those coins in a custodian like Coinbase, right? And each share of the ETF is tied to a chunk of the XRP, maybe 5, 10, or 50 XRP per share. Now, that is just sitting in a vault somewhere. So, When people pour money into the fund, real XRP gets taken out of circulation to back it all up. Now, as Jake puts it, with the spot ETFs, every dollar invested translates into actual XRP being removed from the open market, creating genuine buying pressure as the supply tightens. And this isn't just theory or wishful thinking, right? We've seen a preview of it with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin had futures ETFs for years, and honestly, it didn't really move the needle that much. But when the first spot Bitcoin ETF launched, remember the buzz in late 2023 and the approvals in January of 2024? Yeah? Well, suddenly every dollar flowing in meant that real BTC had to be bought up. And that's when Bitcoin's price really started climbing in a noticeable way. Right? The demand was no longer just abstract. It was literally yanking Bitcoin, BTC, off of the exchanges and locking it away. Now, let's apply the same logic to XRP. XRP futures have been trading for over half a year now, and the SEC's usual waiting period before approving a spot ETF, generally around the 6 months of futures data, has already been satisfied. In other words, XRP is eligible for a spot ETF approval anytime. The only thing holding it up has been a little bit of regulatory drama, specifically the United States government shutdown that happened most recently. Now, that shutdown has forced the SEC to hit pause on a whole ton of ETF applications. In fact, roughly 90 different ETF filings across crypto assets have been sitting idle while the government was closed. Several heavyweights from Grayscale to Bitwise to WisdomTree have filed for spot XRP ETFs and are just waiting for the green light. Many of those applications had final decision deadlines scheduled for late October 2025. But because of the shutdown, everything has got delayed just a bit. Now, that government is potentially on or back on track, right? We're essentially in a bit of a countdown. Any week or day now, the SEC could say, okay, it's game on for XRP spot ETFs. And that is when things could get really interesting. Why? Because the moment that a spot ETF is approved, those authorized participants, basically the big financial institutions that handle the ETF's trading, will need to go and buy up massive amounts of XRP to start the fund. Now, 𝗗𝗶𝘀 warns that when these players start buying millions of XRP from exchanges with limited inventory, well, the market could face a serious supply crunch. Now, liquidity on exchanges isn't exactly plentiful these days. It's lower than it's been in a very long time. So if suddenly multiple institutions are racing to accumulate XRP at the same time, well, it's kind of like high-stakes game of musical chairs with too few chairs, right? The price could start moving upwards fast, not because of the hype, but because of plain old simple scarcity. Right? In Jake's own words here, this would be the start of the real game for XRP, where big players compete for real tokens and we get true price discovery driven by supply and demand. Now, I do want to pause here for just a second and make something very crystal clear. Now, this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, we had to get that out of the way, so let's get back to the story here. Right, the prospect of a supply-driven XRP price surge has me both excited and a bit cautious. Now, on one hand, as someone who's held XRP and sat through my fair share of wild predictions, it's thrilling to think that we might finally see a real catalyst that lives up to all of the hype. And I mean, we're talking about actual market mechanics here, right? Big money players scrambling to buy limited amounts of XRP. This is not just a tweet or a rumor, right? This could genuinely push the price upwards if it really does play out as described. And on the other hand, I'm a realist, right? We've heard grand stories before in crypto, and not every kind of game changer actually pans on out. Now, could XRP hit some crazy number like $10 or $100 in a supply squeeze? Well, I'm not going to say that it's impossible, right? The math of a supply crunch is in fact very legit. But I'm also not banking on specific numbers or timelines here. In fact, whenever I see the community buzzing about, let's say, $500 XRP, I kind of treat it as a bit of a fun thought experiment, not a guarantee, right? Now, that said, for the first time in a very long time, I can see why people are actually speculating about high targets. If institutions end up holding a large chunk of XRP supply for these ETFs, where the token scarcity could resemble something that we've never really experienced before in XRP's history. It is essentially uncharted territory, and that's both exciting and a little bit scary, but of course, in a good way. One thing is for sure, that I want to be prepared if this scenario unfolds. If spot ETFs get approved and a frenzy really does kick off, then I don't want to be caught or scrambling for the scraps that are left. So let me kind of share a really quick tip from my own playbook here, and it is an important one, so pay attention. I always make sure that I have multiple exchange accounts set up and ready to go. Seriously, right? In the past bull runs, I've seen exchanges go down or freeze withdrawals at the worst possible time. Right? Nowadays, I keep a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C for trading. For example, I'm verified on Blowfin, BitGet, LBank, Kraken, Coinbase, Binance, a whole bunch of other exchanges that I trust as well. I've done the KYC. I've tested small trades on all of them, so that if my go-to exchange, let's say BitGet, is overloaded, or knock on wood, it suffers an outage of some kind, then I can quickly switch to another one and keep on rolling. Now, if you're not set up in this way, consider it a bit of a heads up. And of course, by the way, I have completed and compiled a list of all the exchanges that I personally do use and set up on our website. The link for that is in the description down below. Those are affiliate links, which means if you do sign up and trade through them, then it does support the channel here, and I really do appreciate that, and it does not cost you anything extra to do so. Now, the bottom line is this: whatever you decide to do, have a backup option, right? When the market goes nuts, you're going to be glad that you did. Now, beyond just thinking about exchanges and trading strategies, I've also been exploring ways to grow my crypto stack, during the quieter times. Now, since we're kind of talking about big institutions and major catalysts, let me just switch gears for just a minute to tell you about something a little bit more grassroots that I've been kind of personally experimenting with. This is something called Unity. Now, if you've been around on the channel for the last week or so, you've probably heard me mention Unity many times before. It's a community-driven project where people can, well, at least like you and me, can of course contribute to a decentralized network using things like your spare smartphones. And you get to earn crypto in return for that. Think of it like a kind of distributed infrastructure project, right? You provide a little bit of your computing power and your resources, and you get paid crypto for your contribution. So here in my story, I actually bought a Unity masternode a little while back that came with 200 licenses, meaning that I have the capacity to connect up to 200 devices, phones, tablets, etc., and to kind of use the Unity network under my node NFT. Now, I'm not about to go ahead and set up 200 phones tomorrow, right? I do like crypto, but I'm also not turning my home into a data center, at least not yet. My plan is to start a small test once the Unity mobile app goes live, which should be at some point this month. And I'm going to hook up these 10 phones that you see over here initially to run that test. Why 10? Because I want to see the results on a manageable scale before I even think about ramping things up. It's a classic start small and scale up if it works approach, right? Strategy, that's what I'm about. So if those 10 devices run smoothly and the rewards look as good as the website indicates, then I might gradually add more over time. So you're probably thinking, what kind of rewards, you might ask? Well, Unity lets you choose the crypto that you want to be paid in. It isn't some random token. I'm planning to actually get my payouts in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano's ADA, and you bet it, XRP, basically stacking more of the coins that I truly believe in. I see this as a great passive strategy, right? While I'm, waiting for the big news to break, like XRP ETFs to play on out, I've got these little miners or mobile phones, for lack of a better word, I guess, earning little bits of Bitcoin, Ether, ADA, and XRP on the side. Now, this is not going to be a get-rich-quick scheme by any means, but over several months and years, those earnings will accumulate quite nicely, at least based on the rewards calculator on the Unity website. So it's kind of like staking or mining, but with your old smartphones, doing distributed tasks. Now, I do want to stress, you have to do your own research on Unity if you are curious. Just because I'm testing this does not mean that you should blindly jump on in. There is a light paper and a rewards calculator on the Unity website, and I'll put a link in the description down below. And I do encourage you all to have a good read about those ideas if it does intrigue you. Now, the concept of Unity and earning crypto through a shared network resources like this, it isn't new to this channel, and it's not new to a lot of other people. I've discussed it several times in several different videos, so I won't dive into all of the nitty-gritty here because you've probably heard it a dozen times already. But so far, I do see the potential, and I do think this has long-term prospects to it. But I'm going to keep you posted because this video and all of the videos I do are documenting my journey in the crypto space, and Unity is now a part of that journey. Now, I will share this really cool update too. I ended up purchasing a second Unity master node. Why two, you might ask? Well, the second node is something that I'm going to use to help out members of our community. Not everyone will be able to buy a full master node on their own. So I'm planning to lease out some of my extra licenses to people who are interested in Unity. But maybe you want to start a little bit smaller. Now, this is kind of like a win-win situation, right? You could participate in the Unity network by using one or a few of my node's licenses instead of actually going to buy your own full node. And you would still earn a good share of the crypto from those devices. Now, I'll have more information on all of how this will work on my own website, which I'll try to link in the description down below, and in the free Discord server, also linked in the description, right? So if Unity sounds like your kind of thing, then definitely hop into the Discord server. It's completely free. It's full of educational crypto discussions like Unity, and we'll announce there when these license leasings are ready to go. Now, we've built a nice little community, right? And it's a great place to ask questions and learn together. Okay, let's bring everything back to the bigger picture here, right? The XRP saga. What's my takeaway from all of this? Well, honestly, I'm leaning optimistically on XRP's future right now, more than I have in quite a while. And it's not because of some wild hunch or hype. It's actually because the fundamentals are lining up in a way that we haven't seen before. Right? We have real institutional interest, evidenced by those millions pouring into XRP funds. And once the SEC gives the all clear on spot ETFs, well, that interest has to translate into actual buying of XRP. And that could be a powerful catalyst. But, and there's always a but, I'm also staying rather grounded, right? Nothing in crypto is ever guaranteed, right? The SEC could delay things much further, or maybe when the ETFs launch, the effect on the price is more gradual than it is instant. We just don't know yet. Now, markets can be a bit weird. Sometimes they price in expectations early on. Other times they lag and then they overreact. So while I'm preparing for a potential supply squeeze scenario, I'm also mentally preparing myself for the possibility that it takes a lot longer in terms of time to play on out. Or the other factors like macroeconomic conditions or big XRP holders selling could counteract any upward pressure. The key is that I've done my homework here, and hopefully I've helped you do your own too, right? At least today, right? Now, I know and I understand the why behind the XRP ETF buzz exists. It's not just hype. There is actually concrete mechanisms here that could drive the price. Scarcity engineered by the structure of spot ETFs. Now, that knowledge, it helps me cut through a lot of the noise. Whether XRP goes to $5 or $50 in the next year or not, I'm going to know that it's not simply magic, right? It is simply supply and demand. And hey, right, even if you're not an XRP holder, this was a pretty fascinating case to study in how crypto landscape is actually evolving, right? We've got the Wall Street side with ETFs potentially shaking up one of the biggest altcoins. And we got the grassroots side of things with Unity letting everyday people participate and earn in new ways. Crypto never sits still, and that's what makes it so exciting, sometimes even nerve-wracking. At the end of the day, I'm just happy to be here on this journey, learning and adapting as we go. Right? If XRP's real game is about to begin, then I'm gearing up to play carefully, right? Wisely, and of course with my eyes wide open. And if it doesn't pan out as expected, well, I'm just going to adjust and keep moving forward. As always, that's the mindset that you've got to have in this space. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me and, diving into this story. I hope that it has shed some light and maybe even given you at least a few ideas for your own crypto strategies, right? Because if you have found this video helpful or even thought-provoking, you can do me a favor. You can hit that like button for me and subscribe, right? I've got plenty more stories, experiments, and crypto adventures to share with you all, and I'd love for you all to join the ride. So until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I will catch you all in the next one.